Clapton makes a very interesting point about Jimi Hendrix in the following clip, and I was rather surprised to hear what he says here, and I sat back and reflected on it for a while and really can't make up my mind about whether or not I agree with what Eric Clapton has to say here. So I thought I'd throw it out to you guys and get your opinion on this. So basically in this clip, what Eric Clapton's going to be talking about is how Hendrix took London by storm with his band, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, after having only a very short time to rehearse. And despite the fact that in the club where Eric Clapton saw Hendrix perform, the audience was almost totally made up of professional musicians. So let's listen in to what Eric Clapton had to say right here.
He'd been in England, I think, about a week, and they'd just got the Experience together. And he had the club on his feet, you know, from the word go. They couldn't believe it. It was just solid musicians, the whole club, you know. He was incredible. He really was. And he had he rehearsed 2 days and he had like an hour and a half act of great songs, and the band was together. Still, he could have been up there on his own, you know, he didn't really need anybody else. He could play on his own and do it perfectly.
Now, of course, there's nothing surprising in the fact that he said, wow, Hendrix really blew everyone away, or that they had so much material assembled so quickly, because if you know Hendrix's biography, you'll know that he'd been a gigging musician for a very long time. He'd gone through many different bands and played with many different bands, so he was probably able to get material together very quickly in a pinch. The part that I found really interesting and somewhat surprising about what he said was at the very end, he said, you know, the band was incredible, but he really didn't need a band. He could have just went out there and played all by himself and accomplished more or less the same thing. He would have been fantastic all by himself. There aren't that many clips of Hendrix playing by himself. There is, of course, the very famous clip of him sitting on the stool in his gypsy outfit playing a 12-string and doing a version of Hear My Train A-Comin'. For someone as gifted as Hendrix, very little material with just him playing. There are studio tracks where he plays virtually all the instruments, but if Hendrix were around today, for example, he'd be all over YouTube playing his guitar and sitting on the edge of his bed or sitting on a stool or whatever. You would hear and see him playing in a variety of settings. Now, of course, along with the Hear My Train A-Comin' clip, there is also that clip of Hendrix playing in his hotel room with a few of his friends sitting around, and I did a video on that clip way back in the archive somewhere if you want to search it out. And it's him doing a version of Hound Dog. So I think that Eric Clapton poses a very interesting question here, and my feeling is if Hendrix had lived, we probably would have seen him eventually do a tour as a solo performer, like with an acoustic guitar in that type of setting. I really do think that might have happened. On the other hand, I also feel that we were really lucky that fate brought the Jimi Hendrix Experience together exactly the way that it did. Because I think that Mitch Mitchell and Noel Redding were the perfect musicians to complement Jimi. Later with the band of Gypsies, of course, the material changed slightly, Jimi's focus changed slightly, his orientation toward music changed, and the band is a different animal altogether. I'm not going to say whether I think the band of Gypsies is better or worse than the Experience, but I definitely think the Experience, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, was the right band to introduce Jimi Hendrix to the world. I think that if the band of Gypsies had been the launch pad for Jimi, he may have been a much more of a flash in the pan. I think there was a dynamic to the Experience and an excitement to the Experience and a growth curve to the band that everyone who heard them could see it happening before their very eyes, and that brought an excitement to the process. Now, of course, Hendrix is so talented that he would probably have become a star performer in one capacity or another no matter what he did, but I really do feel that the Jimi Hendrix Experience showed him in his best light. And I think this is really evident in the Monterey performance, which is as close to that most of us will ever come to seeing the kind of performance Clapton is describing in that clip. And I think when you look at the band, it's very much a band. Yes, Hendrix is the star, he's the lead singer, and he's the lead soloist, and he's the songwriter. But the band has a character that's very definite and very unforgettable. And I think that Mitch and Noel created the perfect platform for Jimi to be seen in his best light. My question to you is, do you think Hendrix would have been just as successful without the experience? Could he have been just Jimi Hendrix? This is what I think, but what really matters is what you think. So if you have an idea about this or any other topic connected to classic or contemporary music, please drop it in the section below, and remember to like and subscribe. Also, if you're enjoying the videos, I hope you'll help us out by clicking on the thanks button right down there below. Or if you prefer, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link and leave a donation at the Buy Me a Coffee site. Thanks a lot.